Okay, the definition of output tax. Actually, இது கொஞ்சம் இன்ட்ரெஸ்டிங்கா இருக்கும். Definition of பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் output tax in relation to a taxable person means this is from 2 subsection 18 of the IGST Act. The integrated tax chargeable under this act on taxable supply of goods or services are both made by him or his agent, but excludes the tax payable by him on reverse charge basis. So as per the definition of output tax, RCM liability that is paid by a taxable person is excluded, but if you look at GSTR 9, RCM liability actually will be there as part of your output tax. So definition ஒரு மாதிரி இருக்கு, form ஒரு மாதிரி இருக்கு. So I leave it to your imagination. Okay, then basically if you look at the chart in the beginning of the topic, you have two mechanisms. One is the forward charge mechanism, the other is the reverse charge mechanism. Reverse charge mechanism is what we saw. Tax is payable by the recipient of supply instead of the supplier. Forward charge mechanism is normal. The tax is paid by the supplier. In FCM, there are two types. One is the regular scheme, the other is the concessional scheme or the composition scheme. In regular scheme, tax is collected by the taxable person from the recipient and paid to the government. Whereas in the composition scheme or concession scheme, tax is paid by the supplier of goods or services or both without collecting from the recipient to the government. Okay, this is composition scheme. Composition scheme is a concessional rate of taxation. Now in reverse charge, tax is calculated and paid by the recipient on behalf of the supplier. The recipient may be a taxable person, a registered person. Specific on the reverse charge notification, one category of recipient கொடுத்திருப்பாங்க. So tax is calculated and paid by the recipient on behalf of the supplier. The supplier may be a taxable person, that is a registered person, or an unregistered person or a non-taxable person, whoever he may be. So the liability in respect of certain specified inward supplies of goods or services is shifted to the recipient instead of the supplier. A classic example, goods transport agency. So even நான் வந்து ஒரு business purposeக்காக ஒரு லோக்கல்ல ஒரு லாரி எடுக்கிறேன். அவர்கிட்ட போய் நீ ஜிஎஸ்டி ரெஜிஸ்ட்ரேஷன் வச்சிருக்கியா என்னன்னு தெரியாது, அவரால் எழுத படிக்க கூட தெரியாது அவருக்கு. அவரை போய் நீ ஜிஎஸ்டி ரெஜிஸ்ட்ரேஷன் வச்சிருக்கியா, இவே பில் போட்டியான்லாம் கேட்க முடியாது. ஸோ அவர்கிட்ட நான் போய் அவருக்கு பதிலாக அந்த சர்வீஸ் டிரான்ஸ்போர்ட் சர்வீசஸ்க்கு ஆஸ் அ ரெசிபியன்ட் ஐ வில் பே த ஜிஎஸ்டி. ஓகேவா? திஸ் இஸ் ரிவர்ஸ் சார்ஜ் மெக்கானிசம்க்கு ஒரு எக்ஸாம்பிள். And remember, RCM is also applicable on certain types of goods. Okay, it's not merely services. Though for examination purposes, we see more of the services part. Practically, there are some 11 to 12 items of goods on which reverse charge will also apply. Okay, so we'll go into levy and collection of tax on forward charge mechanism. Under this, we have the regular rates as well as the composition scheme. So first, we'll see the regular scheme. So I'll take IGST as well as CGST simultaneously. There shall be levied a tax called the Central Goods and Services Tax on all intrastate supplies of goods or services or both, except on the supply of alcoholic liquor for human consumption. Correspondingly, in SGST Act, this will be read as there shall be levied a tax called the State Goods and Services Tax on all intrastate supplies of goods or services or both, except on supply of alcoholic liquor for human consumption. Alcoholic liquor for commercial consumption or industrial consumption is already under GST. I think it is under 28%. Now, the CGST shall be levied on the value determined under section 15, which is the valuation section, and at such rates not exceeding 20% as may be notified by the government on the recommendations of the council. So for CGST, which is given in CGST Act section 9, corresponding in SGST, it will be given in SGST Act section 9. Same for UTGST, it is in section 7. Okay. The CGST on the supply of petroleum crude, high-speed diesel, motor spirit commonly known as petrol, natural gas and aviation turbine fuel shall be levied with effect from such date as may be notified by the government on the recommendations of the council. Now, recently I read that there is a proposal to first bring ATF into the scope of GST. Aviation turbine fuel is something which is used in aircrafts for fueling the planes, the flight or aircraft by whatever name you call. So the first step towards this is they are trying to first bring in ATF and to see how it operates under the GST regime. The other thing which is being pushed upon is natural gas. That is also being pushed upon. See, for domestic gas there is no GST. Consumption of gas for commercial purposes like hotels, gas cylinders, for that you already have GST at the highest rate. Now they want to bring in domestic gas LPG cylinder that we use at homes into GST. These two are getting priority now. They are trying to push, but lot of states are opposing because that is the only source of revenue they have. States revenue per பாத்தீங்கன்னா வெறும் petrol, diesel, இந்த gas, இந்த ATF, இந்த alcohol இதுல மட்டும் தான் இருக்கு. இதெல்லாம் போயிடுது அப்படினா ஸ்டேட்டுக்கு வந்து இண்டிபெண்டன்ட்டா ஒரு ரெவென்யூ ஜெனரேஷன் எதுவும் கிடையாது because that is the reason why VAT is still operating on these products. So what is the source of revenue for the states if these are brought into GST? That is the main dispute which is happening in respect of these items. Then levy and collection of IGST. There shall be levied a tax called the Integrated Goods and Services Tax on all interstate supplies of goods or services or both, except on the supply of alcoholic liquor for human consumption. The IGST shall be computed as per the value under section 15 of the CGST Act and at such rates not exceeding 40%. So CGST Act 20% இருக்கும். So you should add the SGST Act 20%. So aggregate 40%. In IGST directly it is 40%. In case of import of goods into India, IGST shall be levied and collected as per the provisions of section 3 of the Customs Tariff Act 1975 on the value determined under section 14 of the Customs Act 1962. So in respect of import of goods, IGST shall be as per the provisions of 3 subsection 7 of the CTA and on the assessable value determined as per Customs Act 1962 section 14 read the import of goods valuation rules 2007. For import of services, IGST shall be levied on reverse charge basis based on the provisions of section 13 read with 9 subsection based on 5 subsection 3 of the IGST Act 2017. ஏனா 5 subsection 3 ல notification கொடுத்துட்டாங்க that in case of import of services received by a recipient other than a non-taxable online recipient including OADR services by NTEOR, import of services will attract reverse charge basis if it is imported for the purpose of business. Okay, then IGST on petrol, diesel, petroleum crude etc. will be levied from such date as may be notified. Okay, then you have an option to pay GST at 0.1 percentage in case of supply of goods by one registered person to another person for exports. அதாவது நான் ஒருத்தருக்கு goods supply பண்றேன், அவர் அந்த goods டைரக்டா export பண்ண போறாருனா there is a concessional rate of 0.1%. இது mostly பாத்தீங்கன்னா நான் ஒரு EOI க்கு சப்ளை பண்ணா இத நான் யூஸ் பண்ணிக்கலாம். அந்த மாதிரி ஒரு சில provisions உண்டு. Okay, the goods must be supplied through a tax invoice. இதுக்கு இன்னொன்னு என்னன்னா penultimate sale being exports னு சொல்லுவாங்க. அதுக்காக நான் ஒரு goods supply பண்றேன் அப்படினா there is a concessional rate. If you observe, this scheme is a slightly an extension of the Form H sale under CGST, under the CST Act 1956. There, if the penultimate sale was being an export, the intermediate sale made till it is exported was exempted provided you issued Form H. This was there in the CST Act. Now they have done away with most of the forms, or almost they have done away all the forms with respect to GST other than with respect to taxation except letter of undertaking. So in this case you have an option to pay at the lowest concessional lowest rate of tax possible, which is 0.1% CGST, SGST or IGST. In case the subsequent sale made by your recipient is going to be an export. That is the penultimate sale being an export. There are certain conditions. One, the goods must be supplied through a tax invoice. The recipient shall export such goods within 90 days from the date of the tax invoice issued by the supplier. So the time limit is 90 days from the date of invoice, not the date of receipt of goods, where the invoice date is going to be before and the supply of goods is going to happen later. The 90 days will not be classified from the receipt of goods date but from the issue of tax invoice date. Okay. Then the recipient shall indicate the GST number of the supplier and the tax invoice of the supplier in the bill of export, and he must have been registered with the Export Promotion Council or any such body which is recognized for such export. Okay. Then a copy of the purchase order for procuring the goods at concessional rate must be provided to the jurisdictional officer of the supplier. To his department, to his officer also he should give a copy. Then he can directly move the goods from the customs station or the ICD or the customs warehouse directly for export. Okay, he can move directly from the supplier's premises to the export house from where it is going to be exported. He need not necessarily bring it to his own premises and then export. Okay, then you should give the bill of export containing the details of the supplier, the GST number, tax invoice number, and the copy of export manifest to the supplier, and the supplier shall in turn file it to the jurisdiction, to his jurisdictional officer. Similarly, a similar copy he should supply, who the recipient should supply to his jurisdictional officer, so that this trail is recorded. Okay, இது எல்லாமே லோக்கல்ல நடக்கணும். So this has to be done immediately. As of now, this information is given manually, but they may automate it in the future. So this is exclusive. You have an option to pay GST at 0.1%. இதுல ஒண்ணுமே டாக்ஸ் இருக்கா, லிட்டரலி டாக்ஸ் இல்லங்கிறத சொல்றாங்க. இல்ல இது வேண்டாம்னா you can go under the regular scheme where that person who is exporting can claim refund of accumulated but unutilized input tax credit as per section 16 if he is going to be an interstate person. Sorry, he is going to use it for exports. So எனக்கு வந்து எக்ஸ்போர்ட் வேண்டாம் சார், நான் எக்ஸ்போர்ட் பண்ண போறேன், நீங்க நார்மல் ரேட்லயே கொடுத்துருங்கன்னா he will follow whatever procedure he is going to use it under section 16 read with section 54 for refund. Okay, so this is an option. Then composition levy under section 10 of the CGST Act 2017. Technically composition scheme வருது GST ல, not only for under this section. Okay,